Talo Falava, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Susana Suisuiki. Coming up.
We're the largest kava drinking culture. We've got over 10 million kava drinkers.
US-produced kava sparks concerns among Pacific growers. Also, seabed mining continues to divide the Pacific. And
it's great that the community comes together and celebrates their athletes, I guess, not just from New Zealand, but from all around the world.
Pasifika Rugby Hall of Fame inductees are humbled and honoured. Recent reports of kava being commercially grown in the US have sparked concerns about the threat posed to the kava industry in the Pacific Islands. Fina Fonua has more.
Welcome to Cup of Kava in Clarksville, a unique destination for those seeking a relaxed cafe experience.
That's the advert of a kava bar hidden away in the small city of Clarksville in America's whiskey state of Tennessee. It's one of at least 6 kava bars in the States. Estimates on the number of kava bars in the U.S. vary from 180 to over 1,000, and that number is growing. Less than 2 weeks ago, Massachusetts welcomed its first kava bar, Root Awakening.
You can actually go out, have fun, get a different feeling. It's not drunk or high, we get rooted.
The owner, Penny Kimmett, told CBS News he was already planning to open a second bar in the States. For the Pacific Islands, the growth of kava bars in the U.S. means more exports and more money. Fiji's Ministry of Trade reported in 2021 that kava exports had more than tripled since 2016. Last year, Vanuatu exported 351 tons of kava to the United States. Californian entrepreneur Tyler Thomas says the demand for kava is rapidly growing.
We're the largest kava drinking culture. We've got over 10 million kava drinkers, 400 kava bars. Probably in the next 4 or 5 years, we'll have a few thousand.
Thomas is a stakeholder in Kavafied, a U.S. company that grows kava in the marsh areas of Florida. Thomas says the domestic production of kava in the U.S. is still in its pilot stage, and there's no agenda to displace the kava industry from the Pacific Islands.
We have no intention of attempting to cut the islands out from kava. That is not the goal of this exercise. The global kava market is growing, and so we're going to approach a point where if Europe opens up, we're not going to be able to keep up with demand.
But word of kava being grown in the U.S. is raising concerns in the Pacific. Kava is the main source of revenue for thousands of farmers across Fiji, Vanuatu, and Tonga. Last week, Fiji's Prime Minister Sitiveni Rabuka told the Fiji Times that there are no market protections and that Pacific Island kava producers needed to lift their game. Fijian kava exporter Praveen Narayan says there's concern.
I think whatever they are planting is on a pilot stage. Concerned maybe after 5 or 10 years if it is really successful. But what the Honorable Prime Minister has stated, I think he rightly stated that the exporters, even the farmers, everybody need to up their game.
Kava researcher Apo Oporosa of Waikato University says there's an urgent need for Pacific Island governments to support their kava farmers.
It's going to affect exports and it's also going to affect GDP. There is a no-win for Pacific people out of this. Our leaders have to speak up.
Aporosa has accused kava entrepreneurs in the U.S. of cultural exploitation.
These people, these Americans, are going into the Pacific. They are using their very flash language. This is what we would expect from the culture industry, okay? It's just diversionary spin aimed at hiding biopiracy.
In 2020, kava accounted for 49% of Vanuatu's exports and 28% of exports from Tonga.
The Cook Islands Minister of Marine Resources says it's unfair for the opposition party to say money is the motivator behind government interest in seabed mining. Leader of the opposition party, Tina Brown, has accused the Cook Islands government of caring more about money over protecting the environment. The Cook Islands hopes to lead a talanoa on seabed mining during the Pacific Islands Forum in Tonga later this year, as the issue has divided the Pacific. Foreign Affairs Minister and Ministry of Marine Resources, Tingika Elikana, was recently in Wellington where he met with Foreign Affairs Minister Winston Peters.
The question was raised in regards for seabed mining, framed around as you'll recall, when we hosted the Pacific Island Forum's leaders meeting, one of the issues was one of the resolution was to look at a talano, a workshop or a conference regarding seabed mining, and that was the issue that was raised by in our meeting. And my advice is that's a matter that the officials at the Pacific Island Forum is looking at when that will happen, and then that's hopefully it's going to come up soon. I think that's something that we have always advocated from the Cook Islands, the importance of that sector to our development, and we're looking at, as we've always said, our actions will be based on the evidence that's gathered by the companies that are doing exploratory and other interested parties. We're going to look at the evidence and then see what steps to take.
There's been some comments about the ethics and, I guess, the fairness around the research and the exploration that's happening, considering it's the same body that is doing the testing and has a particular stance and position on wanting to get this over the line. Does there need to be an independent body so that this is truly a fair and balanced understanding of what could happen potentially to the environment?
Well, as I've said, we're taking up the advice of experts, and I said we will base our decisions on the evidence available to us, and that could be from the people that's doing exploratory now or independent. There's, as you're probably mostly aware, there's people have opinions on in terms of protecting the environment in this field, but we will take our time and listen to the experts in these areas. And I'm sure because we're going to listen, the people will question the kind of experts we're listening to. So,
yeah. Would you be open to having independent experts to make this fair?
Well, it depends on which experts. I'm sure if we open up to other experts, and then people will question why we're listening to those other experts. So it's a matter that we have to look at. But as I said, we're going to base the decisions on the evidence and expert opinion that's provided to us. And it's open for those who are against it and those who are for it to make those views known to us.
Is there a sense of urgency? Why does it seem like the Cook Islands is rushing when it's clearly globally the stance has been to wait? Could be another 10, 20 years. This moratorium has been a stance that a lot of Pacific Island nations are taking as well, including New Zealand.
Well, I think the important thing is this is not something new to the Cook Islands. We've known of the existence of seabed in our waters for so long, and we've taken time and talk with experts in this field about it, and now it's come to the stage where we need to take some action. But we've always taken a precautionary approach to it. As I said, at the moment we're taking an exploration, which is to gather the information, the necessary information that we need before we make our decisions what to do with it. But I think people are jumping the buck to say that we're going to do exploitation when we have, or harvesting, which something that we haven't decided yet, but we're looking at the available evidence. As I said, if there are experts out there who think they're most welcome to present to us their views.
Okay, so you would be open to hearing and taking on board independent advice and research?
I think we've always been open to we got a very strong environment group, the Ipukarea. They've been presenting their views. They've made their views known, and we look at that, and then we look at the other views of other experts.
Tourism and the environment within the Cook Islands is so beautiful, so pristine, and it's how the Cook Islands makes essentially its money through the tourism industry. How will you make sure that the motives are in protection of this environment, like supports the tourism industry, and that money isn't the motive?
I don't think, as you're well aware, tourism is
Opposition leader Tina Brown says the government is motivated by money when it comes to seabed mining over the protection of the environment. What's your response?
I don't think that's a fair observation of the motives behind. I think the motivation is to not so much money, but to make sure the best returns for our people and the best ways for our people to survive. And that's a very delicate balancing act between tourism, our pristine environment, and also the returns from these resources that we need to extract for the development of our country.
The UN shipping regulator has finished its meeting in London, where it discussed how it would reach net zero emissions by 2050. The International Maritime Organization set goals last year of cutting greenhouse gas emissions by 30% by 2030 and 80% by 2040. 8 Pacific and Caribbean small island developing states, namely 6 PEC Plus, are calling for $150 levy on each tonne of greenhouse gas emissions produced by the shipping industry to reach these goals. Pacific nations, although small, often have large ship registries. Caleb Fotheringham asked University College London researcher Tristan Smith if any green fuels are already being used.
There's already a number of ships that are sailing on predominantly biofuels, so fuels made out of biomass feedstock. There are vessels that are using biomethanol, which is one way of converting waste products from agricultural production, for example, not the food itself, but some of the byproduct from that process into a biogas and a biomethanol. There are vessels using biomethane. There are vessels using HVO, which is a liquid oil made from biomass. There are vessels that are trialling and demonstrating hydrogen and hydrogen-derived fuels, but there are large-scale production volumes of those fuels at this point in time. So that's why that kind of the fact that we're in this rapidly evolving but still nascent fuel transition is why to get to a very large amount of fuel production and substitution by 2030 is very hard. It's going to take. There's only a certain amount of bioenergy which is available and scalable. It's probably not the long-run solution, but the hydrogen-derived fuels aren't available in volume and will need some time to mature, and they will need ships with new engines or modified engines in order to be able to use those fuels. And we won't expect there to be necessarily very large numbers of those ships in a short period of time. So that's why we need more time for the fuel transition, but we can do more with the energy efficiency now. And nothing that we've modelled suggests that being practical about that fuel transition, being realistic about how fast it can move, we can't still get to the 20 striving for 30% 2030 targets in greenhouse gas reduction by primarily using energy efficiency. So I'm not being negative about our real life opportunity in terms of greenhouse gas reductions. I'm just saying that those are two kind of processes that will probably move at different speeds.
The 6PAC Plus, they're proposing a $150 per tonne levy on emissions. I understand that is for the fuel transition to help aid that. In 2019, they wanted a $100 tonne per levy. That didn't happen. So do you think it's likely that the $150 levy could go through?
I think it's been likely for a while that something like that will be adopted. The reason for that is that actually I think it was nearly 2 years ago that we first had a summary from one of these meetings that said, one of these meetings being an IMO negotiation that said that there was a majority of people that wanted to have greenhouse gas pricing, or words to that effect. So we got a clear signal that there was enough political support for it to go through. And in the revised strategy adopted last year, there was a confirmation of that. So the revised strategy wording says that we are committed to develop and adopt a technical element in the policy measures that we achieve next, which is some sort of mandate on the fuel standard, on the fuel transition, and an economic element, and it specifically names greenhouse gas pricing. Now, it doesn't name $100 or $150, and it doesn't name anything much beyond the concept of greenhouse gas pricing and some of the objectives that it'll be used for, which is both to achieve greenhouse gas reduction targets, but also to enable energy transitions, enable just and equitable transition, incentivise the transition of the fleet. So all of that language is in the revised strategy. The specific calling out of that policy measure that the Six-Pack Plus have been calling for a long period of time now. But the process to develop and implement that policy has been a long process. It's been many years. It needed the revised strategy really to be adopted in 2023 to set that very clear set of greenhouse gas reduction targets to which it can now be designed.
It was a night to remember. The first ever Pasifika Rugby Hall of Fame induction attracted a full house at Eden Park last week on Thursday evening as the Pasifika community turned up in numbers to honour their rugby legends. Elisa Tora has the story.
Wallaby great George Smith, who has Tongan linkage, says he was honoured to represent Pasifika players like the famous Willie O or Viliame Ofahengawe, Daniel Manu, Ippolito Fenukitau and Totai Kefu, who paved the way for him and other Pacific players down under.
Yeah, look, it's great that there's recognition of Pasifika players with Hall of Fame for rugby. So it's great that the community comes together and celebrates their athletes, I guess, not just from New Zealand, but from all around the world. So I can see this definitely going in different pathways with academia and so on, but it's nice this evening to be recognised.
The late John Lomu's wife, Nadine, was on hand to receive her husband's award and said the big man would have been honoured to be recognised by his peers.
It's an extreme privilege for us to be here representing Jonah. Like anything, there's nothing more that I would have wanted than for him to be here to take this honour himself. But to be able to take the privilege for him, he's truly deserving of it, just like all the other inductees. And so it really is a privilege to be here and to be part of the movement for our Pasifika people and the greater good of what it really is.
Sevens wizard, Fijian Waisale Serevi, who played in 7 different Rugby World Cup competitions, paid tribute to all who assisted him in his career, especially those he had played against.
Thank you to all the coaches that I played with. Without those coaches, I wouldn't be here. And all the players that I played with, without all those players, I wouldn't be here too. And most importantly, all the players that are here, that I played against, that have been chasing me all around, that made me the rugby player I was always.
There were also parting words from Nadine Lomu, who encouraged Pasifika players and people to continue the late John Lomu's legacy to stand up for who they are, both on and off the rugby field.
Follow the dreams of what you believe in. And really, no matter what the adversities and the trials and the tribulations of what we have faced as Pasifika people, no matter the discrimination, no matter how we are treated or how our voices become dampened because we are who we are, the biggest thing for me is really reminding our Pasifika people that we can be all that we want to be.
The night also honoured 4 current Pasifika players who are continuing the Pasifika rugby legacy in Adi Savea, Mark Telea and Ruby Tui of New Zealand and Samoa, plus French rugby rep Manae Feleu, who hails from Wallis and Futuna.
That's Pacific Waves for today. To listen back, head over to rnzi.com/programs. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, tō whāsui fua.